Watch right now on the Front News Project. A hellish night for Russians in Crimea. Enemy air defense has been destroyed. Aviation reduced to rubble. SVU drones hit their targets with precision. Putin's Oreshnik is on combat duty in Belarus. Time to reach Kyiv is less than 2 minutes. The battle for Pokrovsk and Kupyansk continues. Putin's soldiers are surrounded. Exclusive footage. Fiery, intense, and blazing scenes from the front line. Watch right now. Hello, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the most important news. Long-range drones from the Alpha Special Operations Center of the Security Service of Ukraine successfully struck key elements of the Russian air defense at the Belbek military airfield in temporarily occupied Crimea. In a single night, Russian equipment worth hundreds of millions of dollars was destroyed. In particular, Nebo-SVU systems, each costing between 60 and 100 million. RLS 92A6, export price 100 million. Pantsir 2, 12 to 19 million. And a MiG-31 aircraft, $40 to $50 million. Meanwhile, Putin, with the help of his buddy Lukashenko, continues nuclear blackmail. According to the Belarusian dictator, the notorious Oreshnik is going on combat duty. And now it can reach Kyiv in 1 minute and 51 seconds. Here are the details.
By the end of the year, a medium-range missile system with the hypersonic Oreshnik missile will also be put on combat duty. We will respond, including with the possible continuation of Oreshnik tests in combat conditions.
Putin has been talking about his massive Oreshnik for a long time and at length. But now the missile is being mentioned not only in Kremlin speeches. After all, it seems the bunker dweller has decided to share it with his best friend.
The first positions of the missile system have been set up. Oreshnik, we've had it since yesterday, and it's now going on combat duty.
And now, interestingly, it's Minsk, not Moscow, that is announcing the missile's deployment on combat duty.
Because if these words had come from the Russian president, it would have been perceived as an escalation of tensions, a raising of the so-called stakes, and in effect a signal that the Russian Federation is withdrawing from the so-called peace agreements. And that would have automatically led to the imposition of additional economic sanctions by the United States.
Although about a year ago, Lukashenko was begging Putin for the Iskander missile system for his own security.
Please don't take this as some kind of impudence. I want to publicly ask you that new weapon systems, and above all, the Iskander, be deployed on the territory of Belarus. That would seriously calm some minds that are already ready to go to war against Belarus.
So, did Lukashenko really manage to convince Putin to hand over the weapons after a year? Or is it not that simple here either?
This is purely a product of Lukashenko's own imagination. There is no objective control data indicating the redeployment of these strike systems, let alone their deployment on the territory of the Republic of Belarus.
Lukashenko's statement, of course, sounds serious, but in reality there are no missiles there. And now more and more it all resembles a performance. But why are they putting on this show?
We can say that this is no longer a coincidence, but rather an attempt by the Russian Federation to exert military and political pressure on European countries with the aim of blocking the issue of possibly seizing frozen Russian assets in favor of Ukraine.
More than a year ago, Russia struck Dnipro with an Oreshnik ballistic missile. Now, it is reported that the flight time of missiles from Belarus to Kyiv is 1 minute and 50 seconds, to Warsaw 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and to Lithuania just over a minute.
Notice that the flight time is not just to Kyiv, but even more so to European capitals. It is precisely this thesis that is being promoted by the Russian side. This makes it clear that the Russian Federation is simultaneously putting pressure on Western countries as well, primarily on European partners, and on Ukraine at the moment of signing the so-called peace agreements. Specifically, we are talking about territorial concessions from our country.
Another telling point is the serial production of these missiles. After all, as is known, it does not exist.
Oreshnik is an experimental weapon system of the Russian Federation. In other words, there is no talk of scaling up production. especially not on a scale that would allow the Russian Federation to deploy it on the territory of the Republic of Belarus. According to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the Russian Federation has between 4 and 7 of these weapon systems.
While the bunker and potato kings are busy playing games with moving equipment around, Ukraine is making sure that there is no equipment left in Russia at all. At the Belbek Airfield, the security service of Ukraine destroyed a Russian MiG-31 and a whole lot of other equipment worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
It turns out that the Russian side is not even capable of providing cover. Not just for key facilities, but even the Russian air defense system itself can't protect itself from Ukrainian strikes. That's the main point here. So it's not even so much about the military aspect as it is about the informational, political, and economic ones.
And this is just the beginning.
Well then, let's analyze the current situation on the blazing Pokrovsk front line. Fierce battles are ongoing. On the Pokrovsk front, our defenders have stopped 38 assault and offensive actions by the aggressor in the areas of several settlements: Shakova, Rodinske, Chervony Lyman, Mirnohrad Pokrovsk, Kotlina Udashna, Molodetska Dashna, and towards Novopavlivka. Yes, the situation on the Pokrovsk front is still quite difficult. However, Ukrainian soldiers are gradually managing to advance toward the city center, taking down Russian tricolors that the occupiers hung up for media appearances, pretending to have taken control of the city. At the same time, Ukrainians now have to destroy even the enemy's reserve army, in particular the 76th Airborne Division, which the occupiers had been holding back for their main assault. TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko will tell us more about how Ukrainian soldiers are fighting for Pokrovsk. We're moving straight to the next houses, heading out onto the street, and then we'll turn left.
The commander of the Skelya Regiment Company is watching the screen closely. A drone's thermal imaging camera is tracking 2 of his soldiers at their position near Pokrovsk.
Turn left, left, copy that.
On the live stream, our drone is sending to headquarters. All you can see are destroyed houses. Somewhere between them, are they trying to pass through and remain unseen? Ukrainian attack aircraft.
They are wearing anti-drone cloaks that do not let heat through as much. Accordingly, they are not so visible.
Ukrainian soldiers have already managed to gain a foothold on the northern outskirts of the city. This means that the Russians' plan for a complete takeover will be destroyed. Pokrovsk.
The enemy who manages to cross the railway, if we cannot detect him due to weather conditions in the fog, then he lives there for 2 days.
Now the task of the stormtroopers is to gradually move deeper into the residential area. Or rather, what was left of it.
A lot of new groups have been established closer to the city center.
In the morning, the defense forces repelled another series of assaults on Pokrovsk. The Russians are already deploying reserves here to prevent our troops from advancing through the city. Several enemy mechanized units. Our soldiers have already destroyed them.
There's a cemetery there. There's a cemetery there. There's a cemetery there.
Now, according to the defense forces, the 76th Russian Airborne Division is storming the positions of Ukrainian units. But the Russians' reserves are not unlimited either. Because of heavy losses, we're talking about hundreds of soldiers. In just one day across the entire Pokrovsk direction, Russian commanders are increasingly deploying foreign mercenaries to the front. Here are 2 of them, just brought in by the unit's fighters.
In an uneven firefight, 2 servicemen eliminated 3 enemies and captured 2. The wounded themselves led them out, tied them up, and took them prisoner. The servicemen are not representatives of the Russian Federation. They signed a contract. During their capture, documents were found confirming that they had signed the contract for money and citizenship. The Colombians' ID...
Republic of Colombia.
As proof of our troops' advance in Pokrovsk, we have captured Russian tricolors. The very ones the Russians hung around the city on camera to create the illusion of complete control over Pokrovsk. Now they're here with the fighters of our regiment.
This enemy flag was taken on Molodezhnaya Street, an enemy sabotage and reconnaissance group. They rushed our positions and tried to hang it up as proof that they were there. At that moment, we spotted the group, completely destroyed them, and took the flags. Capturing the enemy's flag is, like taking the brigade's battle flag. As soon as you take the flag from a brigade, the brigade is disbanded. That's right, isn't it?
On the table next to the flags are the documents of Russians killed in Pokrovsk. Here are passports, military IDs, bank cards, and icons.
In Pokrovsk, it was a sabotage group. As I understand it, it was their reconnaissance platoon. They tried to get into our rear, but our guys worked professionally.
Throughout our conversation, you can constantly hear commands over the radio, given by the commander to his assault troops. And suddenly silence. An explosion appears on the screen. An enemy drone spotted the group and struck it.
No, he's alive. His leg is talking. Grandpa, into the box. And the tourniquet. Got it, Grandpa. He's whole. Everything's fine. And you're okay. Bravo, Lukashenko!
One of the fighters received a minor hand injury, another to the legs. An evacuation vehicle was sent for them. It too in complete darkness. The drone's thermal imaging camera is guiding it.
Don't touch the box, let it go.
The advance in Pokrovsk. In reality, it comes at the cost of tremendous effort by the Ukrainian army. No matter how many Russians are destroyed, the occupiers send new ones.
It's always the same tactic. It's people. They send them into the meat grinder. We destroy them. They send more.
Logistics for the defense forces still remains a difficult task because of the actions of the Russian drone group Rubicon, which has now concentrated its forces specifically in the Pokrovsk direction. But our soldiers continue the operation in the city because the neighboring town of Mirnohrad is nearby. If one city falls, the defense of the other will fall as well, say the defense forces. And that's exactly what they're trying to prevent.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kupiansk front. Putin's army is up to its usual tricks here as well. On the Kupiansk front over the past day, 3 attacks by the occupiers. The defense forces repelled enemy assault actions in the area of Zarizhov and towards the settlements of Pishchana and Hlushkivka. And this is despite the fact that the Russians in Kupiansk itself remain surrounded. All attempts to enter the city through the gas pipelines. Our defense forces are blocking them. Now the aggressors are forced to cross the Oskil River to get closer to the city, but even there they're being destroyed by our defenders. In the very center of the city, there still remains an enemy group that cannot advance anywhere at all. Intercepts reveal that there are a lot of wounded there. So how is the clearing of the district in Kupiansk going? TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko saw the Putin soldiers herself. Which means now you will see them too.
We entered the Kupiansk district. We're now driving through a tunnel made of netting. Of course, in this kind of atmosphere you feel a bit safer, but you still have to stay alert. Right now, we can hear some kind of activity happening outside the car window. The shots are most likely ours. We're driving through our own territory. The key to success on a road like this, which gets closer to the front line, is to press the gas as hard as you can. Keep an eye on the sky, that's why the car window is open. Just in case we hear the sound of a drone, and of course we're being accompanied by guys with shotguns. The occupiers are trying to control all approaches to the front line from the air. The proof of this is the burned out cars on the roadsides or even right in the middle of the road. And not just military vehicles. Meanwhile, the drone analyzer intercepts the signal from enemy FPV drones. The soldiers are flooring the gas, but in this kind of mud it's simply impossible to go any faster. There are no more nets above us, but instead there are continuous blankets of fiber optic cables on the ground, which are easy to get tangled in. Everything on the ground is covered in fiber optics. It's really easy to get caught up in it. The operation to push the occupiers out of Kupiansk is still ongoing. Here is one of the central districts of the city. The drones serve as our eyes in the sky. The Russians are trying to gain a foothold in one of the high-rise buildings. Our soldiers are eliminating the remaining enemy group. Our drone precisely flies into the window of the high-rise that has already been hit by something heavy. The Russians who tried to hold out there have no way out now.
Many of them are sitting there wounded and they're just rotting away. One of them is complaining that he had a leg wound. And when it finally healed, the bones didn't set properly and he couldn't walk. So just imagine he's sitting there, they only throw him some medicine and that's it.
The pilot prepares another drone. The armed forces still have plenty of work to do, even though they managed to push the Russians back to the banks of the Oskil River and several villages in the northern part of Kupiansk. They still have one route left, which the enemy is trying to use to infiltrate the city.
It's a gas distribution station. They come in here from the direction of Holubivka, and somewhere in this area they have a crossing. They cross by boat, and here the pipes go out, these pipes right here. And
Right now our soldiers are trying to cut them off. This is the best pilot crew from the separate 151st Battalion. You realize this when you see the drone operator fly an FPV drone right through the apartment building's window.
you said it's interesting work. It's interesting to work against enemy personnel because you see the apartment buildings, they were spotted there. But you understand there are a lot of rooms for maneuvering in there. They were seen there and they ran across. Well, we struck where we were given the coordinates where they were last seen.
Just 2 months ago, these fighters were flying large fixed-wing drones until they were shot down by the Russians. After that, they decided to retrain as FPV drone pilots themselves. When they went for training, they say Kupiansk was still almost entirely under the control of the defense forces. Then the occupiers began to push our troops out of there, and when the guys returned, they immediately joined other units to take the city back under Ukrainian control.
The most important thing is that they closed off Kupiansk up to the river. There are flashes there that are being observed. Just yesterday, they were even chasing someone. They were chasing one person around Kupiansk. He wanted to run toward Holubivka, but then the SP unit shot him.
Said he is originally from Donbass. His home has been occupied since the beginning of the ATO. As a teenager, he moved to territory controlled by Ukraine. He jokes that he ended up in the army when he came to update his information at the military enlistment office. But he definitely doesn't regret it because he knows what it's like to lose your home.
To the maximum, everywhere, all across our land. Until nothing is left. We're taking out their army.
The soldiers have just received a new supply of drones. Several are already lying ready for launch. They say it's in the Kupiansk area. The coordination between the troops is such that it sometimes allows them to rest and help us get out of their position, without any incidents.
So we can see your vehicle and warn you if anything happens, because we're right on the edge here. We'll hear them if they usually pass by us. The fiber optic cable, it comes in, so at least we can warn you over the radio. In
the pilot's hands are the controllers. Now our safe passage depends on his vigilance. Just like the entire operation in Kupiansk region, which depended on the skill of ordinary Ukrainian soldiers, and they handled it.
Now let's analyze the situation on the Lyman front. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Lyman front, the aggressors attacked 15 times trying to advance. Near the settlements of Novovodyan, Kolodyazi, Drobyshevo, Novoselivka, and toward the settlement of Cherneshkina. And now attention. Very soon, NATO is expected to face dark times, as Russia is preparing to attack the alliance from the territory of Belarus once again. The Russian defense minister has already named exact dates, and Putin openly claims that NATO is supposedly provoking them. How is Russia preparing, and is NATO ready to repel this attack? We will tell you all the details in our report.
Russia is preparing to attack NATO, and it is doing so from the territory of Belarus. As Bundestag member Oreshnik stated, Russia has already deployed 2 army corps on the territory of Belarus to strike NATO countries.
Thanks to a war economy, Putin is training hundreds of thousands of soldiers who are not being used in Ukraine at all.
Even before the attack on Ukraine, Putin claimed that no one was going to attack anyone. The dictator makes similar statements about attacking NATO.
Does even one of you actually believe that Russia is preparing to attack NATO? What is this supposed to be? Are we really going to attack NATO? Is that it? What kind of nonsense is this?
That's why, as experts say, you should take everything coming out of the Kremlin with a grain of salt, divide it by 10, and don't listen to the words, but watch their actions.
Well, first of all, there are the drone flights. In other words, they're testing how things will work. They're checking whether Europe will respond to a drone attack. They fly into airspace with airplanes. Not for long and not for a significant amount of time, but they do fly over Estonia, and they've flown over Finland as well. The concentration of troops has increased. In any case, the number of Russian troops in Belarus, as well as joint Russian-Belarusian forces, will increase.
Military exercises, an increased budget for the Russian army, preparing Russian legislation for martial law and propaganda. Everything points to the fact that Putin is preparing for something bigger.
Remember what Peskov said? 2 days before, this is Putin's advisor, 2 days before the attack, before the start of the so-called special military operation. He said that no one was ever planning to attack 2 days before it began. So naturally, we can only analyze the signs of what might happen. But all European analysts, NATO countries, they all agree that if the Russians are going to start something, they most likely will. This military action would be against European countries, the Baltic countries, maybe Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, maybe Finland. Well, Belarus would be limited, but if it's Lithuania and Poland, yes, most likely it will be them. There will be attacks from the direction of Belarus, and for example, Estonia borders the Russian Federation.
Ukrainian intelligence has repeatedly stated that for Putin, Ukraine is only the first stage. Moreover, recently Putin has personally started blaming Europe for the war in Ukraine and publicly insulting Europeans.
It wasn't us. The war was started in 2022. It was the destructive forces in Ukraine, supported by the West. The West itself knocked on the door. They unleashed it. This war. And the European piglets. Immediately and actively participated in this significant work of the previous American administration, hoping to gain financially from the impending collapse of our beloved country.
Lukashenko has also become bolder, since the territory of his country serves as a springboard for attacks. He stated that the continuation of the war in Ukraine threatens global nuclear conflict and the complete destruction of Ukraine. And he gave advice to everyone living next to a sleeping bear.
Well, if you happen to live next to this large sleeping bear, then it is best not to wake it up under any circumstances. Find a healthy, normal relationship so you can peacefully coexist.
Back in October, Finland's Minister of Defense, Timo Kani, he warned that Russia is building up its military power near the EU borders and preparing for a second phase of aggression which will threaten NATO even after the war in Ukraine ends. The minister noted the active modernization of the Russian army and the redeployment of units to the alliance's borders, which indicates the Kremlin's long-term aggressive intentions against Europe. And Bundestag Deputy Kiesewetter states that, in his opinion, 2026 and 2027 will be critical years. Experts are saying the same thing.
Therefore, most likely military actions will begin, if not next year, then the year after at the latest against European countries. However, they will take on a hybrid and, for many Europeans, unexpected character. It's not just someone random saying this, it's their commander, the chief of the general staff. A hybrid war begins in such a way that the population doesn't realize it, and even the armed forces leadership doesn't know whether it's already a war or not yet. Most likely there will be some little green men, some so-called people's self-defense groups, somewhere in Estonia, for example. There will also be some other actions, unknown drones and so on.
Moreover, as Russian Defense Minister Belousov personally stated, allegedly, NATO is preparing for a military confrontation with Russia as early as the 1930s.
All of this indicates that NATO is preparing for a military confrontation with Russia.
This means that propaganda in Russia has already begun, and the Kremlin is trying to convince both Russians and the whole world that they didn't start this, but Europe did, and that Russia is supposedly being forced into it. It's exactly like before the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine. Previously, people in Europe didn't really believe in such a scenario, but the more they felt aggression on their own territories, the more they began to prepare. They became afraid.
Well, they're waking up. Europe, it took 4 years. We were shouting at the top of our lungs saying, look, Russia won't stop, it will keep going further. But they really didn't want to come out from under the blanket, like children who hide under the covers when they're scared. Or, to use another comparison, like a warm bath. They didn't want to. Now they do want to. Whether you want to or not, you have to do something, because the threat is becoming tangible, not just real. When you say it's real, a person doesn't feel it, they don't understand at all. But when they start to understand, to feel that it's about to hit and they'll be lifted up, that's when the fear begins. That's when action starts. Well, thank God at least something is starting to be done.
The Europeans have already started to strengthen their defense, allocating more budget to the military-industrial complex, preparing people for war. At the same time, they've begun to increase their support for Ukraine because they understand that Ukraine already knows how to fight and is a reliable shield for NATO. But even so, Europe still hopes that if peace is achieved in Ukraine, Putin won't go any further. The countries that border Russia are especially tense. Finland warns that Russia will move troops to NATO's borders even if a peace agreement is signed in Ukraine. Russia remains a threat. Finland has already hosted the first summit of 8 countries on the eastern flank. These are countries that have either a sea or land corridor with Russia and Belarus. For Europe, it is now important to be ready for self-defense, as the United States is beginning to withdraw from the continent. And the tense situation is only escalating. And now...
Let's move to Huliaipol, the Polish and Oreshnik directions of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill and maim here as well. In the Huliaipol direction, the enemy attacked the positions of our defenders near Huliaipol and towards Varvarivka 10 times. In the Oreshnik direction, the occupiers launched 3 assaults in the area of Plavny. 36 wounded, many of them in extremely serious condition. These are the consequences of the attack on Zaporizhzhia. The occupiers dropped 4 aerial bombs on the regional center and nearby settlements. One of them hit a multi-story building. Several floors burned out completely. People escaped the fire in their house clothes. They grabbed their pets with them as they fled. TSN correspondent Daria Nazarova visited the site of the terrorist enemy attack and followed the rescue operation. Let's watch.
Shock, panic, and columns of smoke. Around noon, a Russian bomb hit this apartment building.
Plaster started falling on me, and then it was dust, all of this. I couldn't see anything. I was calling for my husband, but he didn't answer.
The State Emergency Service rescued people and animals from the fire. Here's the moment when a dog and 2 cats were saved.
My beloved, my youngest, my dear. The rescuers saw him. I didn't see him. They saw him and got him out. Now the owner should come.
She herself, Valentina says, was miraculously saved along with her husband. Their apartment on the 7th floor burned down completely.
The rescuers pulled us out. There wasn't even a fire yet. They said, run, run, it's about to catch fire. So we left, but everything stayed behind.
This elderly couple was left without a roof over their heads. For now, they say they'll stay with their daughter and then they'll figure things out. They curse the Russians for what they've done.
Oh, fascist has a fascist.
Nadezhda was very frightened by the shelling.
Petya is in intensive care, and as for us, everything burned down. Well, we saw it online. Their apartment was right on that side, 7th floor. And everything was in flames.
As a result of this attack on Zaporizhzhia, 2 apartment buildings were destroyed and another 12 were damaged. 30 people were injured, 3 of them are in serious condition. More and more people keep seeking medical help. Aerial bombs. The Russians also attacked infrastructure facilities. A production facility was damaged there. 3 people were injured.
That's all for today, but very soon on Front News. New unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, brought to you so you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.